And welcome, Hoosier fans, to another victorious episode of the Assembly Call. As tonight, Indiana defeated Lamar 85-72. This is a game that Indiana led 40-24 at the under 4-minute timeout in the first half. It had been a little bit of a lackluster first half, but Indiana went on a little run. It looked like they were finally going to pull away. And from that moment on, for basically the final 34 minutes or 24 minutes of the game, Lamar outscored Indiana by 3 points. Really, Indiana played about as well as I just did math there. Just as I was talking with tonight's co-host Chronic Hoosier before we went on the air, just kind of a lackluster performance from Indiana. Not really what you would expect, what you would hope, coming on the heels of that big victory over SMU, and so we will break it all down tonight. Probably a little bit more to talk about tonight than we had hoped originally, but we'll break it all down. This is the Assembly Call. I am your host, Jerod Morris. As I said, the great Chronic Hoosier will be my co-host tonight. Thank you very much, Chronic, for coming on. Andy and Ryan both had prior engagements, so they will be unable to join us. To start, as we always do, the banner moment, which is, of course, the point during the game when I feel like we're on track for our sixth banner. Kind of hard to find one tonight, really, just with how Indiana played. But again, I think, when you look at this game, I think James Blackman Jr. again showed that offensive skill that we have come to count on early in the season. He scored 21 points again. He was 5 of 7 from downtown. And even more than that was James Blackman Jr. had 6 rebounds again. And so, I think one of the question marks about him coming in was how physical would he play? How much could he rebound? How much could he defend? Really, I'm questioning how much our entire team can defend after tonight's game. And so we'll talk about that. But in terms of James being able to score, James being able to contribute as a rebounder, these last 2 games especially, he's done both of those things. And so, when you look at an Indiana team that clearly is struggling on defense, giving up 1.07 points per possession to Lamar, we're going to have to outscore people if we're going to win games. And clearly, James is, if he's not our leading scorer, he's certainly going to be one of the top guys that we count on for points every night. And consistently now, every time we see him out, every time in Canada, in the exhibition games, early in the season, he's out there putting up 20 points a game. And so, for a young guy to be able to count on him like that is big. But even better than that, his ability to rebound, when even guys like Hunter Mosquera-Pereira are only able to grab 3-4 rebounds, for him to be able to go out there, grab 6 rebounds and contribute like that, really I think shows not only ability but also leadership by example for a young guy, which just shows us what we expected, which is that he's a really special player, but I think he's been even better than advertised so far. So that was the positive, but there are a lot of negatives to talk about tonight. And, you don't often hear me, kind of get down on the team after a 13-point victory, and clearly there were some things they did well. But I was disappointed tonight. And so, we're going to talk about some of the reasons why, probably a lot of the same reasons why you were as well. But before we get into all of that, let me bring on my co-host tonight, Chronic Hoosier, and let's get his initial thoughts on this Indiana victory.
Hey, you got me on tonight, Jerod.
What'd you say? I'm sorry.
I said thank you for having me on tonight.
Oh,
Happy to join.
It is always a pleasure to have you on. Thank you.
No, we had said it before break. I think I tweeted it out right at the end. This really felt like just an uninspired Thanksgiving break game. I mean, I just, after kind of expected there'd be some letdown following a win as big as SMU was for this team. Lamar came into this just a shade higher than whale shit, and they played us even. I mean, what did you say? They outplayed us over the back end of it.
Over the final 24 minutes, yeah, they outscored us by 3.
Yeah, just thoroughly uninspiring basketball. But like you said, a win's a win. Certainly wasn't a pretty one. We'll see if they can shape it back up here on Monday, but that was not anything to write home about. I expected more from them, especially considering really the first time we've seen the full roster with Emmett Holt out there, and not to mention Devin Davis back in the stands. I mean, right behind their bench in the huddle with them tonight. I thought maybe they'd show up with a little more inspiring performance.
Yeah, I mean, you look, it's always important with these early season games for context because obviously, we don't play Lamar every season, so we don't know, okay, how good are they? And they're not good. They are basically third from the bottom in Ken Palm's rankings. Only Mississippi Valley State and Grambling State, Purdue's most recent opponent, are lower than Lamar. And just for comparison's sake, as I tweeted out, Purdue played Grambling State, comparable to Lamar, beat them 82-30, which is what you should do in a game like this. And I don't remember the name of the guy who was doing the play-by-play on the Big Ten Network, but he said, hey, maybe instead of a big 40-point victory, it's good for Indiana that this was close. And I suppose I understand the logic of saying, hey, maybe a closer, more competitive game. But I think when you're the 28th ranked team going up against the 349th ranked team, there's nothing good about playing a team, or letting a team that you should beat by 40 outscore you by 3 points over the final 24 minutes of the game. And I want to talk about the defense because that was the most glaring issue tonight. And if you want to compare, these two teams have a common opponent. Both, Lamar played SMU. SMU beat them 93-54. So they held them to 54 points. Lamar played Texas State and lost 65-55. Their one win was against LSU Alexandria. They won that game 78-75. So they scored at a similar rate to what they did tonight. But coming into tonight, Lamar's adjusted offensive efficiency was 87.9. So basically they were scoring about 0.88 points per possession. And then we get the final number tonight. It was 1.07 points per possession for Lamar. So I don't want this all to be, banging on Indiana's defense because to Lamar's credit, they played smart on offense. I thought they took good shots. They made shots. So I thought their team really came in ready to play and took advantage of what Indiana was giving them on defense. But the problem is Indiana was just giving them too much on defense. It was either being passive and allowing entry passes in for, easy post moves with great position, or it was allowing Lamar to get behind him in the zone for alley-oops or for easy layups, or just allowing dribblers to get to the lane. And for Indiana, for this team to get where it wants to go, it's simply going to have to do a better job defensively than what it did tonight. I mean, what were your overall thoughts just on the team's defense tonight, Chronic?
I crap. Like you said, this was a team coming in that just had a terrible, terrible percentage. It's the fifth worst offensive efficiency in the entire nation, and they just came into our gym and hung 70 on us. And we had seen it in the first couple of minutes of the SMU game. Tom bounced back and forth between the man and the zone, just trying to find something that worked. But eventually they went into a straight man. He shortened the distances between the defenders and their marks, and the guy started jumping the passing lanes finally. And this one, you could just see it in the body positioning. Nobody was in a good stance. They just were not aggressive with their defense. It was thoroughly uninspired. That's just my one takeaway from this is, they kind of slept, walked their way through it like a team that just got finished, probably a lot of exams before Thanksgiving break.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden their minds are elsewhere. It certainly wasn't on playing good defense tonight because, with 2 minutes left, Lamar had this thing. It was a ball game. I mean, this was by no means like a runaway.
Yeah, it was 77-70.
Yes, this is not a good basketball team. Just on sheer athleticism alone, on sheer shot-making ability alone, this should have been high into the double digits by that point in the game. And they just didn't care enough to put it there. They just allowed them to hang around too much, sloppy passes. Again, just poor effort. I think that was the biggest difference I saw, the effort that they put forth in the SMU game. And obviously, there's a big difference between the number 22 ranked team coming into your gym versus Lamar.
Yeah.
Students aren't there. Gym's fairly empty comparatively to what they'll see most of the season. They've got to find a way to muster more effort than that. And again, contextually here, you've got all these guys that we've heard all this about, how this has brought them together and how they've circled the wagons and everything else, and it's them and they're doing it all for their brothers now, and they've cut everything else out. Nobody looked like they were playing for squat tonight. Not themselves, not their brothers, not anybody. I just did not see much effort on the defensive end.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, defense is about effort and it's about positioning and alertness, and and those last two, positioning and alertness, come down to focus. And look, context is important in a game like this, because after a big victory, like you said, where Assembly Hall's rocking and now tonight it's not, a lot of times you're going to see that. I mean, Indiana didn't play very well the game after, when they beat Kentucky. We don't really remember that very much right now, but they didn't play well there. So you're going to see a drop off sometimes there, right? And around the holiday time, you see that sometimes. And so, that context is important too. But what bothers me about it, and what I really wanted to see tonight, was just the guys getting into good habits. Because I think in these types of games, Honor, just as an example, Honor kind of bounced back with 11 points and 4 boards and did some nice things. But, after what he did against SMU, where he, wasn't able to grab a rebound and really struggled offensively, that's not really important to me, right? Because we've already seen him play okay against Mississippi Valley State and that kind of competition. So what he does from a scoring perspective tonight isn't a big deal, right? I think what you look for are habits. Are the guy, because that's what defense is. It's about a habit. It's about habitually over time. Are you in the right position? Are you are you always doing the right things? And that's where you don't want to see the lack of attention to detail, the lack of focus, because you can't just flip that on for big games. That's the kind of thing that really just needs to be there and be consistent. And I think, and that was the disappointment for me tonight, is that it really wasn't there. I want to talk about a couple guys who I thought had some really good stretches. And that is Emmett Holt in the first half and Stan Robinson to start the second half. So, Chronic, let's talk about those two guys. Let's start with Emmett. I think the other big thing I wanted to see tonight is, would we see Emmett Holt? And we did. He came in the first half, and I think his first possession, he grabbed an offensive rebound. Then he got a steal and led a little breakaway. It was a nice little 2-on-1 breakaway where he kept it himself and scored, and then he got a defensive rebound. So I tweeted out that through 1 minute of his college career, he was basically a cross between Alan Henderson and Victor Oladipo. It was about as auspicious a beginning as you can get. Again, all caveats for competition, but he looked good. And I think what a lot of people saw is he looked just kind of fluid and natural out there, right? Whereas Hunter is such a great athlete, but it always seems like he's kind of trying and he's thinking through what he's going to do. Emmett kind of looked more natural out there, which was good to see. Now, in the second half, he didn't get very much time and didn't really do much with the time he got. But, I do think long-term for this team to get where it wants to go, Emmett Holt is going to have to become a rotation player. And obviously we need to see bigger sample sizes, but at least what I saw tonight, he seems to have that potential. What did you think of his first opportunity in an IU uniform?
I must have missed your tweet, but I tweeted virtually the exact same thing when he came in, I think. Because literally, Hunter, what did he have last game? He had 1 rebound and 1 foul, and that was the only box score he registered, or something to that effect.
Yeah.
And then I think it was somewhere around like the 5, 6, 7, 8 minute mark. I don't know, somewhere before he finally recorded his first point. So it literally took him like a game and an eighth to just get 1 rebound and 1 basket. Emmett Holt comes in, had 2 boards and a basket, like 60 seconds into his college career. I started thinking about that, and it really actually got me on this whole train of thought for most of the first half, trying to figure out, what is it with Hunter? I mean, you can see Hunter look amazing at times. His explosive athleticism can carry him so far beyond what his baseline skill level is. And then there's often times where you get the good and the bad Hunter. He might have a series of rebounds and then dribble it off his foot and throw a pass into the fourth row. And then there's periods where Hunter just goes completely non-existent. I know Tom said that he was pleased with the way Hunter was working last game. Yeah, I saw him locked up with a lot of guys. I didn't really see him elevating above hardly anybody for some of the rebound attempts. He was almost out there just going through the motions without in any way, shape, or form impacting the game. And as I was trying to watch the first half after seeing Emmett come out, one of the biggest factors, especially with the way this offense is running right now, is how easily the offense completely forgets about Hunter. This isn't like, maybe the offenses we've seen the last 3 years where you had a lottery pick in the post and we knew it was going to be a good idea to get them the ball. no matter how ineffectively we executed that idea at times, they still at least operated with the intention that it had to play through the post. This team seems to have no problem kind of foregoing the dribble part of the dribble drive offense, just making perimeter passes, not even looking at Honor down low, and just waiting for the first guy that's got, maybe a step on his defender to throw up a jump shot. Whereas when Emmett came in, I think the rebound that he got was off of a drive, maybe like a 6-foot pull up. He got it on the other side of the rim. The offense started coming to him, though. And I think that's a huge, huge factor, is they've got to find some balance between the inside and the outside game. Teams know that we have liabilities in the post. I think that's pretty clear at this point. I mean, Lamar came in. I think they grabbed nearly 30 rebounds on us, 29 tonight as a team. We're going to struggle in there, and I think teams are very, very aware of it. So at the same time, we've still got to at least make the effort. It's almost like a football offense that runs the play action. You've got to run in order to keep them honest. And if we want our shooters to get any sorts of respect, or there to be any kind of a driving lane, they're going to have to figure out a way to get the ball inside and create that space through passing, rather than just dribbling it into whatever, packed-in defense collapses on them every time.
Yeah, there's been...
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Well, I think, you bring up some really good points on Hunter, and I think, there has been a lot of critical talk about him, since obviously the SMU game and with some of the things that happened tonight. I do want to say this. 1 second here. I do want to say this about Hunter, which is that, one of the big question marks coming into the season was, can he stay out of foul trouble? Because we know that, Hunter has been prone to picking up a lot of fouls. And to his credit, he has not been fouling much. I mean, again, he only had, 2 fouls tonight. Yeah, 2 fouls tonight. He hasn't gotten in foul trouble. I think maybe it was the first or second exhibition game. He picked up 2 fouls in the first 4 minutes of the game. But other than that, and he didn't pick up many after that. And I think part of what I'm seeing with him is he seems to be, and I don't know this for sure, but it just seems in his play that he seems to be really focused on not fouling, to where it almost makes him, overthinking, a step slow to react, and not very aggressive when his opponent has the ball. And I think he needs to learn how to balance not fouling with still being aggressive at defending shots and playing physical on-the-ball defense when his man has it in the post. And, Hunter, he didn't play much his first couple years. He's still very much a work in progress. And, so we are going to have to gauge improvement, in small increments with him. And, we've seen him taking more charges, and we've seen his hands have improved some. His shot looks better. So there are improvements there. And hopefully that continues, because like you said, he's got the physical talent. And if he can get more alert, and I think learn to play more aggressive still without fouling, it's really going to help him. Now, the other kind of short stretch I wanted to talk about that I was really impressed with, in addition to Emmett Holtz in the first half, was what Stan Robinson did to start the second half. Because Stan, he started the second half. He did not start the game. The usual starter started. He started over Zeisloft in the second half. And he started out guarding the point guard for Lamar, playing extremely aggressive on-ball defense. And really, for the first 2 or 3 possessions of the second half, Indiana played really aggressive on-ball defense, and they were denying, the passes to Lamar on the outside. Really aggressive. I don't know where it went, but they came out of the second half, shot out of a cannon, and I thought Stan did a great job in that first 3-minute stretch. He got taken out after that. But he got a steal on the first possession. He was aggressive but smart driving to the basket. He was rebounding. I mean, he did a lot of his work for the night. He had 6 points. He had 4 boards, 2 steals, a block. He had a really good possession where he had a really nice drive, and it got blocked at the last second by a Lamar defensive player who made a great play. And instead of kind of hanging his head, Stan sprinted down to the other end and got a block himself. And he just, I think that's about as hard as I've seen him play, as focused as I've seen him play. One of the better, 3-minute stretches of his career at Indiana. Now, he went out after that. He looked kind of tired because he was just kind of spent, in large part just because of how hard he had played. But that, to me, was impressive. And if we can get more stretches like that from him, because I think his big value to this team, obviously we know about his ability to drive to the basket, and sometimes that's good and sometimes it's a little ill-advised. But for a team that really has defensive problems, if he can pressure the ball like that out front and make it hard for opposing teams to initiate their offense, hard to make entry passes, he can provide a lot of values to this team. And it was great to see that, and I hope it continues as we move through the season. Chronic, let me go over to you and get your thoughts also on Stan.
Stan came out kind of like I thought the whole team should have tonight defensively. I mean, he came out at the beginning of the second half and just bullied his guy. He was just physically overpowering him. He was more athletic. He was using that to his advantage. But kind of like what we were just talking about previously, that to me was all about effort. I mean, Stan went out there and leveraged the advantages that he had. I thought it was great. I too thought it was kind of odd that he was sent to the bench so quickly, but I understand he was out there giving it his all, and you would think presumably we would have a little bit deeper, more depth, I guess, at that position on the floor. But I think that's one of the things in Crean's systems that you've seen is the guy running the three really has to be that pressure defender. He's always relied on that spot pretty consistently to go out there and be a force in the game. I mean, you think of the Sheehees, you think about the times that he would put Watford even on a point guard, just to put that length out there and that athleticism. It works well in his defensive schemes. So,
hit the wrong button. Chronic, you're going to hate me. I just hit the wrong button and I muted you. Can you make that last point again? Sorry.
I thought I said something wrong. I'm sorry.
No.
I got a ding and I'm in the penalty box. And
you know what? This show so far has been a lot like Indiana's performance. We're a little off. There's coughing. There's audio issues. I'm muting the wrong person. Where's the effort and focus, dang it?
I'll tell you what.
Come on.
I'm going to blame my end of it on a frustrating game, first of all. Yeah. Second of all, Comcast has been on my short list here all week. They're really dropping the ball on me. Slight humble brag here, though. I am now, what is that? I am 53 hours cigarette free. So
hey,
I'm maybe a little prickly tonight, maybe not myself. I walked out of the house yesterday for the first time in my life and left my cell phone. I've never done that as long as I've been a cell phone owner, and I left the house yesterday without it. So you have to forgive me tonight if I'm a little bit off, albeit hopefully a little bit healthier here in the long run. So
hey. A round of applause for that, though.
It's kind of like an airplane movie, though. Watching that IU football game, and then with the lackluster performance tonight, I literally feel like Tower Control had picked a wrong day to stop sniffing glue.
Yeah. So on the positive side tonight, I mean, look, Indiana did win by 13 points, so it's not like if the tone is a little doom and gloom here, it's not like Indiana lost, even though. It felt like that a little bit watching it, just because Indiana couldn't really control the game as you would expect them to. But, one thing I did like is Indiana kept the turnovers down again. Only 14.4% of possessions. It was 9 turnovers total. They didn't turn the ball over for a long time in the first half or in the second half. I think they might have only had 2 in the second half. I don't know the exact numbers. They did win the offensive and defensive rebounding percentages, so it's not very often that we're going to see wins for Indiana in that category, and they did do that. And here's the thing I liked about the rebounding. When you look at the box score, everybody contributed to the rebounding. I think 11 players played for Indiana. Everybody had at least, or maybe 9 or 10, whatever it was, but everybody had at least 2 rebounds. Now, again, you would hope that some of the interior guys would have more, but the guards really did a good job. Blackman had 6. Yogi Ferrell had 3. Robert Johnson had 3. Troy Williams had 5. Stan Robinson had 4. And so whereas last year Indiana's rebounding was so keyed by Noah Vonleh, who led the conference in rebounding, we may not have an individual player who's in the top 20 in the conference in rebounding. But if consistently on a night-in, night-out basis we can get contributions like this from everybody, then that's good. So I think that was another positive. Indiana shot well again from downtown, making 9 of their 23 pointers. They didn't shoot many free throws in the first half, but they were able to get to the line more in the second half. They made 16 free throws. Lamar only shot 8, so that's a good stat. So some of the numbers were good, and so despite the frustrations, there were some good things there that Indiana was able to do.
I'll tell you
I
what.
want to talk.
I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
go ahead.
Along those lines, I just pulled up the stats there while you were speaking. James Blackman's leading the team. He came into this game leading the team
Yeah.
by 1, and he grew that lead tonight in the rebounding column. Troy Williams second. With what limited time Troy's had, he's second on the team in rebounds now. So I'm sorry, I'm reading off somebody else's stat line. Never mind. That was Robert Johnson was tied for second going into this game.
Mm-hmm.
So you're getting a lot of that rebounding effort coming from the perimeter players, coming from the guards, which is a big departure here from what we saw last year. I mean, Noah Vonleh at times was like a vacuum cleaner. I was amazed at the you just expected when the ball came off the rim, he was always going to be there on it. This time, I think Hunter's. It's kind of weird because he's always engaged. He's always trying to block out, but he's not necessarily trying to rebound. It seems as though he's clearing out the space. You see a lot of balls hitting the floor on the rebound, guards coming in after it. But he's certainly not the one who's maybe putting the primary effort in going after some of those loose balls. Part of it, too, I think, is when you've got a three-point shooting team like the one we have, a lot of those balls are coming off the rim long, which has certainly aided the guards for it. But no, that's been a surprise. Not just as James pouring it in the bucket, he's leading the team and cleaning up the glass right now too. So, that's one thing coaches often talk about. You talk about hustle and where was it? Look at the guys who are consistently leading in rebounds, who are leading in steals. I assume deflections would be indicative of that. I didn't quite see the stats on deflections tonight though, so forgive me.
Are there any box scores that do include deflections? Can we set up like TomCreanStats.com and it just has deflections?
As much emphasis as he puts on it, I think it's fascinating because in theory, yes, that's something that's very important as an influential and helps change games. But I've heard maybe from some of the managers that it's not really the most scientific of stats. Often during the games, you got guys calling out to the stat men who got the deflection, whether or not they necessarily saw it or not.
Yeah.
And I know that the players are certainly aware that it's something that the staff closely watches. So, maybe those numbers, kind of like attendance, are subject to slight inflation from time to time. But no,
Yeah.
I would really love it if you would publish those. Just whatever metrics you're using, show me. I mean, it's obviously important to Crean. I don't tend to disagree with them that it's a good thing. It's a sign of hustle. Share them with us, Tom. Start putting that on the box scores. Wouldn't it be cool if we did tempo-free stats as well as deflection-inclusive stats?
Yeah, I think IU fans need them. I mean, you kind of laugh about deflections because Coach Crean does talk about them a lot, but I agree with them. I mean, in concept, I think they're a really important stat. I would like to see that. If you guys have questions, we got a lot of people watching live. Thank you very much for being with us tonight, especially on a Saturday night. If you have questions, you can tweet us with the assembly call hashtag, and we'll be able to pull them up. We got a few questions right now. Also, if you're watching from assemblycall.com/live, you can go down. There's a link to the YouTube page, and you can go there. There's a discussion going on. You can ask questions. I'll be tracking it, and we'll be able to answer some of those questions. So let's go to a couple of our questions here. And Tom asks us, why does it seem every time a player gets on a good roll, he ends up on the bench? And I think you saw that with Emmett when he came in and played well, and then sat down. A couple people asked me that on Twitter when Stan sat down at the end, at the beginning of the second half. Again, sometimes guys get on a roll and they're playing really hard and they need a break. But we have sometimes seen that where Coach Crean has made a substitution, for a guy who's not in that regular rotation. I mean, Yogi, is playing most of the game. James Blackman Jr. is playing most of the game. Really, Robert Johnson has kind of positioned himself in there where he's playing 30-plus minutes a game. But when you have guys like Stan, who come in and have a good stretch like that, I don't really know the answer to that question. I think, with the team the last few years, well, not the last few years, but really last year especially, it seemed like Tom didn't really know who to trust from game to game or even from, kind of sequence to sequence. And I think that led to just a lot of shuffling guys in and out. And my hope for this year's team is that they can find more of an identity, more of a regular rotation than they were able to find at any time last year because, last year's team really struggled to do that. I don't know. That's a good question, and Andy would probably be better to to answer that, because he analyzes that more, which is a reminder, assemblycall.com/subscribe. Get on the email list for Andy's analysis. But what do you think, Chronic? I mean, that's been a consistent criticism of Tom Crean really since he's been at Indiana. Just questions about his substitution choices, which don't always seem to follow great or consistent logic sometimes. And sometimes there are some curious ones when guys are playing well. What do you think?
I blame it entirely on Diet Coke and liftoff. I don't know that there's any other logical explanation for it. One of the problems we've seen is this team has consistently been extremely young, extremely inexperienced together as a unit in the Tom Crean era. We always seem to be playing. This year, I think Pomeroy's got us the 19th youngest team in Division I as far as experience across the bench. So, with a roster that's got 60% new faces, with the suspensions we've had, the injuries, with just all the shuffle that's kind of been at play this season, he's very much just trying to figure out where some of those combinations are. So maybe you can write some of that off, chalk it off to that. At the same time, it's a pattern that we see all the time with Crean. I don't really understand. I don't know that anybody but Tom and maybe a couple of his bench coaches know what the reason is behind the rotation. He's just going to do what he's going to do. I mean, maybe there's something that they're emphasizing defensively where there's a breakdown. It could be communication-wise. Who knows? He sees something that for whatever reason he makes them yank those guys seemingly when they're kind of starting to heat up. What's most baffling to me is, a lot of fans will gripe, oh, he just scored a basket. Why is he coming down? Well, how's he defended the last 4 series or as long as he's been on the floor? Tonight, it seemed like some of those sub changes didn't necessarily follow with, maybe a bad defensive play. I'm left shaking my head too. I'm really at a loss here though, because like you said, without having Andy, I really enjoy seeing some of those as he's tracking the stuff in game. It kind of helps paint a clearer picture as to what you're seeing. I certainly don't subscribe in theory to plus minus stats, but they can be illustrative at times, I think. I'd be curious to see what some of those numbers were tonight, because the rotations were it was odd. And I think sometimes you see those rotations having maybe a greater impact on the offense than you would anticipate. It's always strange to me how when you see some of those subs being made, all of a sudden, like the wheels just fall off and things start becoming very disjointed. We had some moments tonight where the ball was actually moving quite nice. They make the extra passes. It seems like, and I'm totally guessing here, our shooting percentage goes up almost 20%. And then all of a sudden, you change a couple cogs in the wheel, and now the wheel just doesn't spin the same as it was a couple series ago. So I don't know what he's doing with it. It's certainly something to watch. I think we can probably expect to see those rotations shortening up quite a bit as the competition maybe picks up a little bit here. When you're playing the third, fourth worst team in the country, I'll give you a pass on that, because if you can't experiment now, then there's really no time for you to do it. But I don't know. It's certainly something to keep an eye on. I'll say this much though: who do you think are the guys right now that you cannot take minutes from? I mean, who've been giving them the best minutes for IU? Forget about where they start or how many they're getting.
Well, I think clearly it's Yogi, James, and Robert. I mean, I think those are the 3 guys who consistently, you have a pretty good idea of what you're getting from them. I think James Blackman Jr. is obvious, and I think he will end up leading this team in scoring. I think Robert does so many things and just, can be so versatile for this team in terms of his ability to step out and make shots and also, play with the ball in his hands. And Yogi, crazily, is really kind of flying under the radar. I mean, I thought he played terrific against SMU, and I don't even think we mentioned his name on the show until we were about a half hour in. And part of that is, as you become an upperclassman, obviously the expectations are higher, so for him to really do something where it kind of jumps out at you and you're like, wow, Yogi did that. It's like you look at the box score, okay, 19 points, 3 assists, 3 rebounds. Okay, I mean, that's just what we expect from Yogi. But certainly we shouldn't take him for granted, and I think he, had another solid game tonight. He wasn't great, but he is cutting down on the turnovers. So for me, you've got those 3, and I think for this team to be really successful, you need Troy to be in that group. And I thought Troy, look, he had 10 points, 3 assists, 5 boards tonight. He was active, but, he also had a few just kind of crazy moments on offense where he's just kind of flying in and throwing up a wild shot. And there's always, you need Troy to kind of play on the edge like that because his athleticism can allow him to do that, but he's got to rein it in a little bit. And, you certainly want Honor to be in that group, but he hasn't earned that yet. And so, and Zeislov's been a little bit up and down, but I think he's found a way to produce even when his shot's not going in. I mean, tonight he was 0 for 5 from downtown. Didn't do a lot on, in terms of the stat sheet. But, I mean, for me, it's Yogi, James, and Robert, and then you're trying to hopefully Troy. I mean, and Troy has played pretty well, I think, in these 2 games, considering there's first 2 games back. I mean, do you see anybody else, in addition to those guys yet, who has proven himself in that group?
The box score doesn't really pop out. I thought Hartman's given some great hustle minutes. He's come back so far beyond where I expected him.
Yeah.
Not just even considering the ACL, but regardless of that, his calming influence on the team, the way that he kind of seems to step up everybody's effort level. He's one of those guys, kind of like you saw with Holt tonight. He checks in and he's going to impact a couple stat lines almost instantly on both trips down the floor. So I think that's been good to see. Johnson is one of those who, with all of Blackman's success, even on a night when he's just not raining them, or maybe he's not getting into the lane as consistently as we've seen, he still continues to stuff it up. I mean, he's been nothing but gravy for this offense right now. I think everybody knew that Yogi and James were going to be critical to our success, and that Honor was going to be kind of a wild card. And it's not just his offense. That kid defends with a lot of zest most times. Tonight, I don't know that he took a full night off, but he maybe worked part-time on defense tonight.
Yeah.
So, that's certainly been good to see as well. I think, like you said with Troy, if he can just let the game come to him, I know he's eager to get back out there. He's got to be a better decision maker, and I think you'll see that coming from him more as the season goes on.
And I think you saw it. And you saw it at the end of last year. Troy is not even playing right now at 75% the level he was at the end of last year. Because if you remember, I mean, at Michigan and some of those games late in the season, I mean, he looked like a different player. It looked like the light had gone on because he was making good decisions. Shoot, he was making threes, and his shot looked a lot better. So he has yet to even get back to that point. And, it's one of those, you see some of those kind of those high-flying turnovers or kind of wild and crazy shots, and, you see him. I mean, there was a play on defense tonight. I tweeted out that, it was a very interesting example of back away from the guy with the ball in the post defense, which Troy will do sometimes. Like, he just does, like, if you kind of isolate watching Troy, he will do some inexplicable things sometimes, like, that just don't make sense, but yet he'll do some other things on defense. I mean, against SMU, again, we talk about deflections. I mean, he was out of position sometimes, but his athletic ability allows him to get deflections and do things and recover even when his alertness isn't where it needs to be. And, I went on record before the season saying I thought he was going to have a huge breakout season, and I still think he will. And I thought it was a real mixed bag for him tonight, but shoot, in 22 minutes, again, 10 points, 5 boards, 2 steals, 3 assists, that's what he can do. He has so much talent, so much raw athletic ability, and he plays hard. I mean, when he's out there, he doesn't always play smart, certainly, but he plays hard and he just makes things happen. And he's going to be so important for Indiana. You talked about Hartman. And Tim Gray on Twitter asks why Max got more minutes tonight than Hartman, and I don't know. And sometimes with the bench guys, it's a little bit tough to gauge the minutes in a game like this because, like you said, Coach Green maybe wanting to experiment a little bit. And Max was really good that first game of the year. Where he had 19 points and 9 boards. A lot of them in garbage time, obviously, but he hasn't really been able to get in a rhythm since then. And I think just because of his height. They've experimented with him, playing at the back of the zone and doing some different things. I think, it seems like Coach is trying to get him in there and get him into a rhythm, but he really has yet to kind of find a way to make a mark in a game since that first one. Another question from Tim is, can Holt find away into meaningful rotation minutes. And I want to get your perspective on this, Chronic, because as I look at this team moving forward and where this team wants to go, and clearly the goals for this team are finish in the upper half of the Big Ten, make the NCAA tournament. I think if both those things happen, everybody looks at this season as a success, no matter what happens in the NCAA tournament. And clearly if anything happens, above and beyond that, that's gravy. I really think for that to happen, especially with not having Devin Davis and, hey, seeing him at the game tonight, smiling the shots of him there, fantastic, awesome. I mean, that was, probably, a better moment than anything that could have possibly happened on the court. But Devin not being there, especially with how he came on some at the end of last year too, leaves a big void that I think for this team to get where it wants to go, Emmett Holt needs to step in and at least be 80%, or 75% of what we were hoping Devin would be this year. Maybe not that much because the expectations were pretty high for Devin, but do you think this team can reach its goals without Emmett becoming a rotation player? A guy who every night is at least getting in there for 8 to 12 minutes. He's, it's not like tonight where you're just kind of cheering that he makes the floor, like he's going to play. Do you think this team can reach its goals without him reaching that status?
It's a tough question because so much of it's going to be the style of play. We may not have, say, 8 minutes on average from Emmett, but we have to get productivity from that spot. So whether it's him giving Hunter a spell, whether it's maybe even Crean, I guess I can't really imagine a lot of times where you'd see both of those guys out on the floor. You certainly need productivity from post players, and that's pretty much everything. Let me throw the threes in there too. I mean, the wing guys even. With this team's makeup, they're going to live and die by their aggression, I should say. They're going to have to be aggressive on the boards. They're going to have to be aggressive in forcing the offense the way they want it. Tonight we made twice as many free throws as Lamar attempted. A lot of times those free throw attempts, that's a great measure of aggression. Are you pushing the offense? Are you forcing those fouls? When you've got players on the floor that are doing that, whether it's a 6'10 guy or a 6'7 guy, I don't know that it really matters so much as long as that aggression is there and is constant as a team. That those guys are defending, that they're doing the little things, because that's the way this team's built. We're gonna have so many nights where the shots just won't fall. You can expect that. You're going to see periods throughout a game where we'll have troughs where things just go cold for them. They're going to have to find some stabilizing force, probably most likely in their aggression and their rebounding efforts and their willingness to drive and to get to the line. That's going to have to be a constant. So if Emmett can come out and when Hunter needs a couple of minutes, or Hunter, whatever his issues are, or if you just need somebody to come out there, I guess, and finally pull down a rebound and score a basket after a couple games in the paint, just so that you can establish that, then yeah, I think he's going to be an important part of it. I don't know. I think the way Crean likes to play, he looked good so far. What we've seen, we have such a small sample set. He seemed like he was quick on the break when we got into transition. So, I guess if he keeps up what we saw in the couple minutes tonight, then yeah, he'll probably start working his way in, because somebody's going to have to fill in that spot when Hunter sits down.
You talked about aggressiveness, and as I was watching tonight, there were so many times where it was just really easy for Lamar to make post-entry passes. And so often a basket in the post is scored before the shot is taken because of a guy, A, being able to get position, and B, the entry pass being able to be made comfortably to where the ball is delivered in a good position. And if that happens and the post man gets the ball on the block in a good position, he can just use a basic post move and score. And that happened a lot in the first half especially. And one of the reasons why I was so excited about the way Indiana came out in the second half was pressure on the ball and really pressuring the guys on the wings. And we know that interior defense, we got a couple of questions about, on Twitter about this too. We know interior defense is a big issue. We know there's not a lot of depth. And I think you can just tell Honor's out there trying not to foul, and so he's a little tentative, fighting for position, and guys are getting position on him. And when they do get the ball down there, obviously he's really tentative to contest the shot. The way that Indiana can counter that, again, you have to play to your strengths, and Indiana's strength is it does have quickness on the perimeter. It's got guys like Stan, who can play good on-ball defense, who have decent wingspans to be able to make it difficult. I would like to, and Indiana's been playing some zone, which makes it hard to do that. But I would like to see Indiana extend its defense a little bit and put some pressure on opposing guards that I don't think we've really done very much, because we're not going to stop many people in the post if they're getting the ball down there, because we're not good at fighting for post position, and we're not good at defending postmen when they have the ball. And I don't think we're magically going to get better because we just don't have the personnel for it. We do have the personnel, I think, to play more pressure on ball defense. Do you think that is something that we will see this team start to do as the season goes along?
I would like to think so. I mean, I've thought that in years past. I've always wondered with the 13 roster, with all the length and athleticism they had, why we didn't press more, why we didn't really extend those defenses. I think Tom's too conservative to really push that a lot. Certainly something I'd like to see. I'll say this much, though, for the team. If there's one improvement that's maybe gone quietly unnoticed, they've gotten so much cleaner with their play, the way they've been able to cut down the turnovers. And I think maybe that's not unrelated to what you see with Honor and the way that you see these guys defending sometimes. I think they're trying really, really hard to make smarter plays. And Lord knows they needed to. I mean, I've said it last year. That was one of the least intelligent basketball teams I'd ever seen. I mean, they just made a plethora of bad choices with an alarming frequency. They've started to cut down on that. And that's really going to be critical. A lot of people were making mention of that with the football game today. They were in that game late, in no small part to the fact that they were actually able to not beat themselves along the way. I mean, they at least played smart enough to get themselves at that moment. And I think you're seeing IU, the light is going off in their heads. You see it with Yogi. He seems like he's really, really cleaned up. He's still running at the baseline and jumping, but I think he has a much better idea where he's trying to go with the ball this season. In years past, he would be descending from his jump before he had any idea where the ball was going. At the same time, though, now they've got to balance that smartness with strength. Honor's going to have to find a way to play stronger. There's no doubt about that. In the post, yes, we need him to be on the floor as many minutes as he can give us, but part of being on the floor is being effective when you're on the floor as well. So I think kind of a theme for this team is how can they keep those mistakes down while maintaining the highest level of aggression that they can. And that's going to go for both ends of the ball. They're going to have to push things offensively. They're going to have to get aggressive on defense and, step into passing lanes and deny. And they're going to have to rebound like nobody's business. They're going to have to win the effort battle on a regular basis. If they can do that smart, they're going to be in a lot more games than they'll be out of, I think.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. I mean, you're so right about last year's team. I mean, just playing dumb so many times. And for the most part, Indiana's done a much better job of that. I mean, they won, how crazy is it that, we won a game against a ranked team because of turnovers and three-point shooting. I mean, last year, that would have been absurd. I mean, that never happened. We lost because we couldn't make threes and we couldn't take care of the ball. So that shows you the difference in the team. And that's certainly, a game like tonight, it wasn't the most pleasant thing to watch, but, it certainly beats a lot of the stuff that we were subjected to last year. So it is, relative in a lot of ways. And, here's an interesting question here. Joel asked us on Twitter, lots of talk about the final five this season. We talked about the starting five, but obviously what's more important is who finishes. And he says, what does the final five in this game say? I think he's probably referring to the fact that late in the game, Indiana went with that five-guard lineup. And I'm reading some of the tweets right now, some of the guys who were at the press conference, Alex Bozich inside the hall, all those guys, Zach Osterman, quoting Crean is basically saying that he went with that lineup because he went with the five toughest guys, that he took a cue there from Doug Collins, that group gave him the best chance to win. And he was probably right on a night like tonight. Those guys did. Again, we need, when you're looking at the 5 toughest guys and those kind of lineups, we need some of the bigger guys to be in that group. Hunter needs to put himself in that group. And look, clearly he showed with those charges he took against SMU, he's not lacking for toughness. I really think sometimes he's overthinking it, and it's making him kind of a step slow. But what do you read anything into that? That Lamar kind of gets it down to a 77-70 game, and Indiana decides to go ultra small, kind of in a little bit of a crunch time moment.
I think that was exactly what we were just talking about, really. I mean, with the aggression, the guys that are really going to go out there and get after it, the guys that are going to force the issue on both sides of the floor, and we can get away with that against a team like Lamar. We can get away with that even a team like SMU. Yeah, they were good, but they were hugely depleted, especially where we were weakest. So that conveniently kind of leveled the playing field, or at least handicapped them a little bit. As the basketball season's drawing on, and we're starting to get a better picture of what some of the other Big Ten teams look like, some of our other non-conference foes. That's my biggest question mark going in, is how is this lineup or these roster tendencies really going to play out when you get into those situations where you're not going to be able to go 5 guards. I mean, we're going to be forced to play a lot of 4-guard sets. I think that's going to be the norm probably for this team. I don't know that you're going to see a lot of other chances though where we're going to be able to get away with that without teams just punishing us inside, both offensively as well as on the glass. And that's one thing that's going to be our Achilles heel year round. We're going to have a hard time against teams that really emphasize that or that make that one of their points of emphasis. So work tonight. We'll see how it goes in the future.
Hey, so, we're going to be wrapping up here in a little bit. Let me ask you this question. What gives you more confidence, James Blackman Jr. rising to shoot a 3 or Tevin Coleman receiving a handoff?
I'm going to say James Blackman by a lot. I mean, Tevin needs about 20 of those before he's going to pop one open for 60, 70 yards. Blackman, on the other hand, what is he, like 6 out of 10 right now? I'll tell you what, I am ridiculous. For as rough as last season was, and I have very deliberately not broke out the hashtag that I'm not going to mention that I kind of put on the whole season last year, because I really want to move away from that. It was bad for my soul and my liver. James Blackman's jumper is such an elixir for that type of feeling, though. It's not even funny. That kid's jumper is the truth. It is so pure. It's so effortless. I got such a man crush on his jump shot right now. It's not even funny.
He's, like I said to start the show, I mean, he's everything we thought and more. Heather has already adopted James Blackman Jr. as her new favorite, so she's clearly a front runner. But that's okay. I mean, I think many IU fans are going to be doing that. As we look ahead, Indiana played tonight, obviously, against Lamar. Quick turnaround Monday against Eastern Washington. And this is, this Lamar game, you kind of came into it hoping it would be a blowout, easy win, kind of like Mississippi Valley State, because Lamar is on that same level. Eastern Washington's a pretty good team. As I'm looking at it right now, they're 153rd in KenPom. They are... they're playing SMU today, or maybe they already played. I don't see a result up there. So there will be a common opponent. And they actually played Texas Southern early in the season, beat them 86-62. But Indiana plays them on Monday night. And, Eastern Washington's a team, they're scoring, over a point per possession. So if Indiana comes out with the same attention to detail on defense against Eastern Washington they did tonight, it could be a long night for Indiana and could end with a result that nobody wants. You look at it right now, KenPom has Indiana winning 82-68 with a 10% chance for Eastern Washington. But, that was a lot based on what we saw against SMU, not necessarily what we saw tonight. So hopefully Indiana comes out with a renewed focus, because this will be a better opponent coming into the Assembly Hall on Monday night than what Indiana faced tonight. So they will really need to be ready to play. With that said, Chronic, I think we've said about all we can about tonight's game. It was what it was. It was a 13-point victory that IU showed some decent spurts, but as we said at the beginning of the show, for the last 24 minutes, Lamar beat us by 3. And, whatever you want to say, whatever positives you want to draw from it, and all the different excuses about it's Thanksgiving and we're coming off a big win, all that stuff, against a team like Lamar that is so far down in the rankings, that's not what you want to see. And so for anybody wondering why the tone at the start of the show was kind of disappointed, that's why. But ultimately, it is a victory, and Indiana moves to 4-0 on the season. So with that said, I will go over to you for your final thoughts, and then we will close things out for the night.
I just hope we get the tryptophan out of our system here before Monday. Like you said, it is a really, really quick turnaround. On the heels of another, we just had a really quick turnaround. I mean, that was a big game against SMU. These kids do have a lot going on. I know all my student employees were quite preoccupied throughout the week, not just tying up loose ends before they went home, but taking tests and things of that nature. And let's not forget, we're now, I guess, 3 weeks exactly post Devin's accident. So
yeah,
those guys have still had quite a bit on their plate for young men that they are. But let's hope I can put that behind them and turn the page here, because this will be a little bit better. I mean, they're certainly not maybe Big Ten caliber coming in. But this is more the type of opponent I'd like to see IU scheduling during this period. I think we'll have a better idea of maybe where this team's baseline is. They're going to get tested. Eastern Washington is a very good shooting team. So we'll probably have a better idea about our defensive efficiency. It's maybe more truer to where their actual baseline will be on the season. More than anything, let's just see the effort, man. Let's see that come back, get the sluggishness out of their system, and I'll be all good with it.
I'm getting conflicting reports here on the outcome of the game. A couple people saying SMU won 77-68. Elsewhere, I'm seeing that SMU won 69-53, but it does sound like SMU won by somewhere close to double digits. So we'll see. Again, that's a game Indiana should win by 10 to 15 points. It's a game where if Indiana beats Eastern Washington like they beat Lamar tonight, you're at the end of it. I think you're feeling a lot better about it just because of the opponent. I think that's the issue that I think people are having with tonight's game is just the context of it. Who Indiana's playing, but look, at the end of the day, you win by 13 points, you chalk it up, it's a win. That's what matters. And obviously, Indiana got kind of that. The resume helping win against SMU that it needed. Now, with this little trio of games against Lamar, Eastern Washington, then UNC Greensboro, you just got to chalk up wins. Hopefully you're working on some things to get better, whether it's offensive sets or different defenses you want to play or just your fundamental, defense and offense, whatever it is. And you just want to get better and see better habits form. And like we said, the turnovers were better tonight. The rebounding was better tonight. There were some elements of the game that were better tonight, and this Lamar team played well. They came out, they made shots, they did some good things, but the big takeaway is Indiana's got to improve its defense. I mean, a defensive effort like tonight isn't going to cut it in 2 months when the competition ratchets up, when the pressure ratchets up, and so certainly a performance the week before Thanksgiving is not necessarily indicative of what we'll see in 2 months. But I think what everybody would like to see on Monday night is some of the issues from tonight corrected, especially on the defensive end. And so we'll see if that happens. And, of course, we'll be here with another episode of the Assembly Call as soon as the game ends. To everybody who watched live tonight, thank you very much. Make sure that you go to assemblycall.com/subscribe. Get on the email list. We send out a post-game email the day after every game. Andy does his lineup analysis. And then go to assemblycall.com. I don't know if I'll do it tonight, but I'm going to start doing a link roundup of all the best links for the post game. For games like Lamar, I may not do them, but especially once we get into Big Ten season, you'll see that the day after every game as well. But again, Indiana wins 85-72, moves to 4-0. We will talk to you all Monday night after the Eastern Washington game. Have a great Sunday, everybody.